is Firecrackers, and we're just about to get started. So the first topic we have at hand today is tackling insecurity in northern Nigeria. Insecurity in northern Nigeria is something that has been going on for over a decade, way over a decade, but the ones that has really caught people's attention, especially when it comes to ones of terrorism, like for Boko Haram, for example. Now, that's been going on for over 10 years in northern Nigeria, and recently Nigeria lost soldiers, about 6 soldiers, to still this fight against insecurity, and this is happening one too many. A fight for 10 years, for over 10 years actually, if we are still battling with it, is something that we truly need to talk about. And then we have the federal government too. When the Chinese foreign minister came to Nigeria, they said that Nigeria is not welcoming the idea of mercenaries, but rather they want to focus on production of these weapons locally, so that we would not have to be relying on foreigners on supplying us for weapons. So now to talk on this, I first of all like to invite Yinka Okunsoya, who is a security expert. Let us first of all look at the decision that the federal government made in rejecting mercenaries to help us in the fight against terrorism and insecurity in Nigeria. Do you think that is the best line of action to take at this time?
From my point of view, I do think that's the best decision the government can make. When it comes to your internal security, you don't want to give the blueprint to external factors. If we're dealing with a joint operation outside the shores of Nigeria, I understand we can do collaboration and training. We can do collaboration in also the military planning. But to bring mercenaries, I think that's going to evolve to a lot of other security risks that we don't plan for. Let me take a quick step back. There's nothing wrong with China coming to Nigeria to help, but sometimes it's like you want to hire somebody, right? You want to see the resume. How many wars has China fought in the recent times, or how much experience do they have in this kind of war we're talking about? We're talking about guerrilla war. We're talking of insurgency, which is not a regular one-dimension type of war that they fought in the 50s in the Korean War. I mean, if memory can serve me right, that will be the most current. I mean, that was the last time China actually went to war to acquire some experience. Just like any other job, you have to have some experience on ground. So I think we can partner with them limitedly in production, which Nigerians have to be in charge, because we know they're antecedent when it comes to business production. They like to own and control everything. So it just depends on who is negotiating on behalf of Nigeria. Just like every Western country does, you must have Nigeria's interest at heart first, and Nigeria's interest must be protected.
Thank you so much for that. And now to Emmanuel Ipole, how do you see the step taken by the Nigerian government when it comes to tackling insecurity, especially in northern Nigeria, because that seems to be the place where insecurity is really eating hard at the moment? If you are to analyze the steps that the federal government has taken so far, how would you rate it?
I will say it's a step in the right direction concerning production and partnership for production. But at the same time, for some of us, we are also thinking at looking really at the political will of those in power. Do we have ammunitions on ground? Because if you look at the report of the last administration from 2015 to 2023, the military only in Nigeria had about 700 new armories and all that's been gotten. If you look at also about 38 aircraft were bought, and then 36 new ones were ordered. You also look about the Navy having about 400 new boats being purchased, and amongst all that was just what was contributed or added to what we already have. The question is, have we been even able to use that for our own security? So if you are looking at production, we're looking at the ones we have we been able to use it? And even if they are going to produce new ones, what is the tendency and what is the percentage that we're even going to use it? So even though I will actually agree of not really working with mercenaries at this time, but because of the failures of our security or law enforcement agencies, and because of their unwillingness and the lack of also accountability on their part, I will actually encourage, even if it's for short term, let us allow mercenaries to come and work, because we have always been hearing issues of these are my brothers, I cannot go and kill my brothers. And people that have tried to even do that, fellow soldiers or fellow law enforcement personnel have tried to also kill them. These have come from reports of certain persons that resigned from the military and other persons in the service. But if you are getting mercenaries, they are not looking whether you are my brother or from the same religion. They'll do what is being assigned to them. So for me, maybe it can be a short term, but in Nigeria, if we really want to address these concerns, because the government on this part have not shown they have arrested any criminals, and neither have they punished any. A few Boko Haram persons they have arrested, they are freed also. So for me, we need something like that, even if it's a short term, and then on the long run, the productions will also be useful. At the same time, the contribution also being made that China, if you are looking at the resume, what can they add? For me, I was actually looking at maybe Israel. Maybe would have been better, since they have been consistent in the fight against different oppositions and all that. And China, we have already been engaged in a lot of businesses. When you get familiar too much, our international policy, I don't know how well it is, but when you keep having one person like in all sectors, being part and parcel of all sectors, there it gets to a particular point that you don't have anything again to hide. There's no secret in that country at all. And that is not too good for a sovereign nation like ours.
Much for that. But when it comes to invitation of mercenaries to help in Nigeria, it seems we are already having problems with some countries that border us. Let us use Niger now, for example, that there were fears initially that France is trying to set up a military base here in Nigeria. So if we are to, let's say, consider having mercenaries fight, would that not perhaps be sending wrong messages to countries who border us? We might be worried about their insecurity because they are also tackling some forms of insecurity too over there.
Okay.
I would say that if you look at just a few weeks back, there were attacks on a military base or a military checkpoint in Cameroon from terrorists coming through Taraba State to actually attack that particular base. These areas, we have barracks in different states along these areas. Not that they are not aware of these persons. And if you also look at the situation in our country since 2015 or even before then, the federal government of Nigeria has been collecting data of even calls or whatever from everybody in the country. As long as you make calls, as long as you do whatever online, the federal government has that, because they have paid billions yearly to be able to get such data. And if they have not been able to use that, make good use of that in addressing security concerns, we are spending trillions yearly on budgetary allocations. Let's not forget that recently the government also signed about $20,000 to retired military, senior military officers for medical tourism. For reward for what? Because they have not been able to address anything. So it shouldn't be consistent that every time we just spend money without accountability. So for me, it's a sign that really it will also encourage our military officers for them to wake up, because they have been sleeping a lot. They are getting money without accounting for anything, and there have also not been any audit of the military as far as recently as I can remember. So as long as there's no accountability, and instead the military are also being able to unable to even handle simple equipment like drones and all that, and have led to the death of a lot of persons. So we're not looking at just the capacity of productions, we're also looking at the capacity of interventions in the field. They have not given us that result. So based on what we have seen against the number of years and the number of monies we have given to them, why don't we audit them? And during that process, we can also do a long-term production partnership with production, but at the same time, we need urgent interventions in a lot of areas. What's the cost of food crops now? It's hiking because of insecurity. Lakurawa in Sokoto, they're already collecting rent from citizens, and even if you farm, you pay them some percentages before you are allowed to harvest your own crops in Nigeria. So the military have not shown, and security agencies have not shown that they want to, not that they cannot handle, they are not willing to. So it's needed that even if it's for short term, mercenaries should come out there and we can give them just the required information for them to work. But I think a short term intervention can really help us. During 2015, during elections we had,
I would like to correct some thoughts right here because it's getting too long.
Few mercenaries that we also got at that time that was able to clear terrorists that we had back then to enable or make it possible for elections to happen all over the country. But after then till now, we cannot really show that our law enforcement officers have not shown the willingness to be able to address anything.
All right, thank you so much for that. Yinka, it seems you want to contribute to what we are discussing right now, especially when it comes to issues of border.
First, because there's some truth in there. You have to walk the walk to be able to talk the talk. I spent 16 years globally, intervention in different countries. So I have the expertise and experience to talk about this subject. One thing you don't want is mercenary in your country. Unless you have been in a multinational coalition fight, you will not understand exactly what the point I'm talking about. You will never give a blueprint. I understand the frustration in Nigeria about failure of the services or failure of producing results. I don't see it as direct failure of this individual branch of the military or security forces. I think it's a collective failure as into the leadership and the intent of leadership. Let us not forget, the military does, or the security forces does, what the political will is. They can just pack up the vehicle and start chasing people around. That does not how it works. There's a logical law and order that they have to follow. They have to follow command. Individual commander has to take command from a higher and also to make sure it meets the president and the commander's intent. These things are not just black and white. These things are more, there's a lot of more of a legal and international eyes on this particular thing. What we should be focusing on is why is China want to help us with, mercenaries. We have enough soldiers. What we lack is training. We need to train. We need to outsource training to some extent. We have Nigerians all over the world that have been in so many sophisticated Western military and have this operation. Then this is what other countries do. You harness those brain power, bring people in, have an elaborate planning, and then move into action. We cannot say our security forces are not doing what they're supposed to do. They are doing the best based on what they are provided. Will I go into mission, go conduct a mission with what those guys have? Probably not, because I know they are not well equipped. I've seen clips. I have friends in there who are generals and lieutenant colonels. I speak to these guys all the time. I know their frustration. They have the will. They want to go and get this job done. But the thing is there, do they have the training? Do they have the equipment? Any country that offers to help Nigeria, be it the United States, you have to think about is their national interest. Did the U.S. go into Rwanda when the genocide was going on? Because they have no national will and interest in there. It's all about national interest. No country is going to spend their money to help Nigeria unless they're going to benefit at the end of the day from it. So it is our time to stand up and be counted that enough is enough. We got to fix this. We need to stop depending on external forces, external handout, collaboration is the only thing we need. We have the men and women that are brave. I did an interview about 2 years ago, and I said one of the bravest military in the world is actually Nigeria. If you, given the fact these guys go out there knowing that they might not make it back that day. When we step out on a mission, we have a 90% chance that we're going to make it back because of the training and equipment we have, because of the planning and the resources we have. So bringing, number one, you're going to have a huge language barrier. How does a Nigerian brigade size element go out into action with Chinese mercenary and be able to communicate effectively on the battlefield? Somebody said they use AI, language translator. Every second delay in making decision on the battlefield, a life will be lost. A whole battalion can be wiped out. So it has to be an organic situation that we can handle ourselves. We can do it. I agree with the last speaker on one thing. We can do it. The problem is, do we have the will? Do we have the political will, and do we have the political intent? He referred to the last administration. I boldly said last time that the last administration did not have the will. I said while President Buhari was in office, it was on this day, there was no political will to get it done. If President Tinubu and the Congress rise up and make this number one priority, because I think it's the number one priority for Nigerians to stamp out this insurgency, because like he alluded to, it's holding us back economically. People cannot basically go do basic farming. That's why the prices are rising. Production and demand is not balanced. So those are some of the issues we have, and some of our people are overly reacting to every situation as Boko Haram. It's not every attack that's Boko Haram. There are copycats out there. I mean, the first thing I said, the template of Boko Haram is easy to defeat because they're basically using the Taliban and Al Qaeda tactics, which there's lessons learned even on the internet to copy from. They're using the same tactics. Number one thing, funding. Where are they getting the money from? Who is funding them? Why is it so hard for us to track the funding? These guys are buying sophisticated weapons. They are having all these vehicles that we can see. They have some Humvees and also some French equipment. How are they getting their hands on this? And these are the so-called Western and Chinese or Eastern world that we want to help us. There's also subtly, like you alluded to in Niger, funding distortion so they can have access to our Commonwealth. I mean, we see what's going on in Niger with Russia. Russia is sending their mercenaries in there, and what they're doing? Taking away uranium free of charge to fund the war in Ukraine. So those are the kind of things we have to be very careful of. You don't open you have to bring it to the macro level. You don't open your house to somebody else to manage the security of your children. You can learn from them. You can buy weapons, equipment from them, but at the same time, you want to be in control of your own destiny. Thank you.
Okay, but still with you. When we're talking about issues of insecurity in Nigeria, some people opine that it is not Nigerians that are perpetrating this evil act, especially when it comes to banditry and terrorism. Some have gone so far to say that there are people coming in from across the border into Nigeria, and then they become tax collectors, so to speak. So would you advise that it might just be best for Nigeria to just close the border between Nigeria and other neighboring countries, or perhaps come up with some other measures that would ensure that our border is not so porous and is not just a walk in, walk out anytime you want type of situation?
Thank you. One of the things you actually hit the nail on the head. One of the measures I've refused back in the days, about 3 years ago, was a total close down of the border, and also strengthen the Border Patrol Agency or recreate the Border Patrol Agency. There is no country with a porous border that can control its security. Yes, it's confirmed. We have foreigners coming in our country and perpetrating in most of this evil. And like I said earlier, it's just the same template in Iraq. When we went to Iraq in 2003, there was no resistance. I was part of the invasion task force into Iraq. There was no resistance. Guess what? All these Mujahideen came from all over Middle East. Also, he is from Jordan. All these guys came from everywhere because they want martyrdom. I can assure you the same thing is taking place in the northern part of Nigeria. They're flying in from everywhere. In the recent cases, Israel and Lebanon. Most of those fighters are not Lebanese. You can see Hezbollah is having a problem with the Lebanese government right now. People came all the way from Syria, Iran, and stuff like that, because that's what they believe in. So if we're not closing and controlling the border, we're just spinning the wheels. We need to know who comes in and goes out of our country, what equipment flows in and flows out of our country. That border in the northern part sector or northeast is too porous. Yes, it says mountainous. I agree with the speaker. We can use technology to monitor our border, and we can use what we call a roving patrol in that area as well, so that we can know exactly where they're going, the path they're taking. Because think about it, when insurgents are doing an operation, they also have limited resources. They tend to follow a pattern. They tend to follow a pattern and have a habit. So when they have like 2 or 3 entry points into the country, they continue to use it. So why are we not finding those things? Why are we not using the drones to find these guys? We have heat seekers. We have opportunity to close down. That border must be closed down. That is number one, to have anything. You can buy all the weapons you want. You can bring all the Chinese you want. That border has to be closed down. Let me round this particular section up by pointing to what's going on in Ukraine. The Russians brought in the South Koreans, the North Koreans. We saw what happened there. Now the Koreans and the Russians are killing each other. They can't communicate, and the Ukrainians are killing them in droves. Because when you shoot, move, and communicate, it's a constant, living, continuous thing you have to do. You cannot leave it to interpreter. You cannot. That was on some of the limitations of the United States military in Afghanistan. We rely heavily on interpreters. How do you know the interpreter is not telling you what he probably wants to do, or a vendetta over somebody? So those are the things we have to be very careful in bringing. What are we going to do? Outsource our police as well? Bring mercenary police into Nigeria? No, Nigeria is a country that can do its own thing. We have 200+ million people in the country. If we have to expand our military and train people, we need to get the right training for them. What I point out is the training is not up to par. The equipment that we're buying, sometimes, from my experience, we're just buying equipment based on what is shining out there. We have to do an intelligence battlefield analysis, see what kind of equipment complements the mission we're about to go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And now to Emmanuel equally, when it comes to issues of border and people coming in and out of the country and perpetrating this evil act, some people have gone so far as saying that perhaps governments themselves are involved in probably having a share of this illegal tax collection done by these bandits in the areas that you're dominating. Would you agree to this point of view, or perhaps there's still just too much more going on underneath that a lot of people don't understand yet?
Yeah, so when I explained earlier that we lack political will in carrying out certain intervention, it was not just on the part of the political leaders. I was also looking at the angle of law enforcement officers. There are many times that communities have arrested certain persons in communities, and you find out that the military or military personnel are part of it, part of the bandits. At the same different times, you have also found that the police officers are also part of it. And it has also given reason why certain interventions or certain operations in certain regions have not worked, because some of these persons have friends that are part of those groups, those type criminal groups that are causing issues within the country. So it's also one of the reasons. Also, if you look critically at 2015, during the elections, there were already reports that certain persons brought mercenaries within the country, and because this candidate won at the end of the day, those mercenaries were allowed in Nigeria. While we are looking at those stories, an aspect of it can still be true because some of those persons still have come out to give certain information. If another thing, the angle is, when you look also at our borders, just like the last speaker said, it has been porous, and there's need for it to be closed down. I gave an example of one of the terrorist group, Lakurawa, that emerged recently. They have recruited persons in different countries within the region, in such a way that if they are being attacked in Cameroon, they run into Nigeria. If they are attacked in Nigeria, they can run into Chad. So there's need for that interagency synergy within the country, also that country synergy at that level, where countries can come together and plan how to address these concerns, especially around those regions. But recently, just like I gave example still of certain persons from a country going to attack security agencies in another country. So if our borders are not being closed down, then these issues will come. But even if the borders are being closed down, another issue is, even when this command is being given, if you look at in the media, consistently the federal government, the president have been reminding security chiefs that they should go out there and address the insecurity issues and all that in the country. What have they addressed? I've been privileged to work in a refugee camp in Nigeria. I've been privileged to work in IDP camps in Nigeria. I've been privileged. Currently, I have a staff, and it's one of the retired people that work in the military that have retired and is working with me as my staff. In Nigeria's situation, a lot of things are involved. A lot of persons don't want intervention in certain areas because it affects their tribe. Others because of religion. These are issues that we have failed to address. And outside this issue of, you see, even clerics and all that coming out to defend bandits, and they are not being held to account at no time. Terrorist groups have come out to claim they have been responsible for bombing or causing issues or killing people. None has been arrested in the country. So even if you produce ammunitions, as long as there's no accountability, we still continue to roam around in circle and not address anything. And outside the political will, service chiefs also have to be accountable. And it goes further worse if this current administration have gone further. When we are borrowing money to upgrade our budgetary allocation, we are going further to share $20,000. If you convert that to Nigerian currency, it's about 30-something million into senior officers for medical tourism. Of what use is that? What have they done to merit such a reward? So there's a lot to be done. So that is why I keep repeating that yes, it's not good. We shouldn't wish for external bodies to come and assist. But even the persons who are partnering with, they also have their own interests. They also have their own interests in the country. And if you look at what the China we're talking about currently in our country, they have a lot of companies within Southwest, for example. Many of this, anybody can do a research on this. It's even in the papers, people can do a research on this. They have not shown at any time that they really value the Nigerians they are working with here in Southwest. I'm saying this, anybody can do that research. So, me, I'm looking at the interest, what helps Nigerians better? What should enable also the internally displaced persons to go back to their places that has been taken by criminals, and the military know these places and what have they been doing to drive these people away? The police officers are aware of these areas. What have they been doing to pursue them or drive them away? But monies consistently here on air, these monies have been allocated even to the military. There should be audits. Let them specify, we use this money to purchase this type of equipment. And what's the capacity that they have in handling them? Same military officers have gone for peacekeeping abroad in different places and have done well. What is stopping them from doing the same in their so-called country? It means they don't want. If they wish and they can, what is stopping them from addressing it? A lot of persons are dying, and they themselves are killing people without even calling to account their own officers that are murdering citizens within the country. So why can we continue to fold our hands and watch hundreds of people die daily? And then what's the difference between them? Because they have become, from being protectors, they have become predators to Nigerians. So I'm not seeing any difference, because even the Boko Haram and the rest, they still work with these persons. For intel. So even if it's for short term, we need people that come and do a short-term fixing in certain areas, and afterwards, let the military learn. At the same time, they need a complete audit in all areas of the military intervention or service chiefs in Nigeria, be it from the personnel, their capacity, the operations they have been carrying, the finance, and all that. At the end of the day, they should purge out the system, punish erring persons or criminal elements in the system, so that we know that the few ones we have left are the ones willing to work for us, not the ones that be calling us bloody civilians consistently.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. But seeing that you are still in the spirit of Armed Forces Remembrance Day, I still feel that, well, despite the fact that things are not going the way people like in Nigeria, we still have to give thanks to our armed forces, because without them, I think that even these terrorists and bandits, they would have done way more damage than they're doing right now. But at least if they know that, okay, they have an opposition, it is still sort of keeping them in check. And because of this, we say many thanks to our armed forces in Nigeria, and for the ones who have departed in service, we thank you so much for the services you've rendered to the country.